While I was researching all these different recipes about eating more anti-inflammatory ingredients, and I was also specifically looking at countries that have low instances of arthritis, one of the countries that stood out is Japan. Around 5% of their population, 5-10%, with arthritis. For a very big population, that is a really small number. And then I had to start looking, what are they doing that's a little bit different, even to the Mediterranean, the Greeks and things like that, to get those numbers so low. And there's two things that you can see quite clearly with Japanese type foods and much of their diet. For one thing, they barely cook their fish. If anything, it's either raw or very, very lightly seared. So for this recipe, I'm going to use a bluefin tuna, which is probably the king of the fish in the entire ocean. Just a little piece of loin meat. I don't have a big portion. As in Japan, you wouldn't have big portions. I'm going to very, very lightly sear it. But the other thing that the Japanese are doing, which is kind of unique among most major cuisines, is to use a lot of seaweeds. And seaweeds are an incredibly nutritional dense food. So I'm going to use what you call a wakame. This is actually one I foraged myself. But in health food stores, seaweed is becoming very easy to get nowadays. And there's all different types, and it doesn't really matter. This is an Atlantic wakame or rib kelp. I picked it and I put it in a little box and I froze it and I just take it out as I need it. And again, you're looking at probably the best sources of iodines of any food. Vitamins, it's got everything, minerals, they're extremely nutritionally dense foods. And you'll pick them up in health food stores very easily. Even supermarkets nowadays are stocking seaweeds. Another thing is, I didn't have any good vegetables there today. So I went in and I used a packet of mixed frozen vegetables. And there's nothing wrong. Nutritionally, frozen vegetables are perfect. So peas, carrots, beans, corn, things like that. And I just thawed these out and I'm going to use them as part of my little miso broth. So yeah, I'm going to use some frozen vegetables with bluefin tuna, and make a nice simple little broth. But they're convenient. What's wrong with convenience? Bringing vegetables into your diet and things like that. Getting elitism out of food is very important, to be practical and get from A to B in a proper way. And another thing, the main seasoning I'm going to use in my broth is big generous spoonful of a thing called miso paste. This is red miso paste, and I'd recommend that you use an organic one. Again, it's becoming a common ingredient. You'll get these in your Asian shops quite easily. Even supermarkets are stocking it nowadays. It's a fermented product. So it's rice and soy, which has been fermented together. You can make barley misos, all different types. But it's extremely savory in taste. So it allows you to, and it's very high in probiotics and good stuff basically. So it's but it's a fermented product, and it will replace stock cubes very, very easily. And bringing in a very good healthy fermented product as well. So I advise, play around with miso. Don't just kind of follow recipes with it. Almost use it like you might a stock cube. And I'm going to use that to just flavor my broth with just a big spoonful of miso. We're not going to put soy into it. I'm not going to do anything really with it. So on with the cooking then. So with this dish, about 750 ml of water, just bring it up to a simmer. And at the same time, I'm just heating up my skillet pan, and I've lightly oiled directly my tuna, but have not seasoned it because you don't want to draw out any moisture into the water. I'm just going to add my miso paste, which will create a nice stock. You could use stock in this as well if you had a nice little fish stock, but again, it's not really necessary. So there's my miso in there. Next up, just only take a couple of seconds to do. I'm going to put my vegetables, because you can get great quality mixed vegetables, and that just makes things convenient. And this is just a nice little kind of a miso soup. You don't have to use all the other ingredients that they say, bonito flakes and things like that. Miso itself is a great seasoning. Into that, and I'm using, as I said, Atlantic wakame, or rib kelp, but you could use any of the seaweeds, and that'll go a lovely bright green now. And this is all it takes to make this little broth. And then I have my Soba noodle, which are a buckwheat noodle. And I'm just going to pop those in there as well. I'd recommend when you're mixing your noodles that you use a tongue as opposed to a spoon. It's just a little more convenient. And I pre-cooked the noodles, but they literally only took a second to cook. And now you have your nice, simple little noodle. That simple. You can just check your seasonings, but you'll find the miso brings out some lovely flavors there, and the seaweed is got so many glutamates and so on it. There's a lot of natural flavorings and seasonings in this. So there's our little miso broth. Done, finished, that's simple. I'm going to put that aside, and then I've preheated this, and now I'm going to just very, very quickly on my pan, sear off my bluefin tuna. Now you could use the yellowfin, you could use albacore, you could use mackerel. Doesn't really matter. It's just that it's an unusual fish to get, and I couldn't resist it. So, quick seasoning on all sides. No one wants to stick. Anyway, not too worried. If it does a little bit, not the end of the world. But the main thing is that you only lightly cook this. And just kind of give it an all-round seasoning. Now when it's got a bit of a sear on it, just got a pinch of salt of that, but not much. And what I'm actually using here is a potassium salt, called low salt, which I think is a great product. So we're just going to turn that off and take those tuna off now. That's all they needed. In other words, I'm keeping them pretty much raw. Now, if you don't like your fish like that, you can, of course, cook it on a little bit more. Down to your own taste. But again, you're looking at what the Japanese are doing, and they're doing something right. And then to serve this, all I need to do is take my little tongs. I'm just going to take some of my broth and my noodle. Plenty of my little vegetables, my wakame. And then I'm just going to drain in plenty of my little stock there as well, my miso stock. And again, you could just use this as a little noodle soup on its own, as is. Nice little savoury soup. But to complete this, I'm just going to very gently, as you see, although my fish stuck a bit, it's not really the end of the world. And it probably would loosen up quite a bit more if I had it on the, if I had cooked it on a little bit more, but no problems at all there. So there's my little tuna. I'll just leave 3 at the moment just for presentation. And then a little bit more of my wakame over the top. A couple of chopsticks in. And that is it. Little tuna miso with soba noodle. You know, very, very simple, nothing to it, and the whole thing is about simplicity.